Thank you all for being here today. I do very much appreciate it. For anybody watching, we are having a conversation. My name is Megan Uten. I am the editor for the Communications Ministry at the Oklahoma Conference of the United Methodist Church. I am here today with 4 people from our Oklahoma Conference, 4 ministry leaders. We have with us Don, who's a pastor in Ponca City, Tracy, who is also a pastor in Ponca City. We have Krista, who is a leader in Don's church, and we have Cynthia, who's also I believe, staff member at Don's church. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. Thank you all very much for being here. I do want to have a conversation today about how the COVID-19 virus has affected your community in Ponca City with 2 different churches in different ways, as leaders, as pastoral leaders, as staff members, as members of the church, as members of the community. And so as we move forward, I will name each of you and ask you a question. At that time, the floor is yours to answer that question and to share your story with us so that others can understand the seriousness of what's happening here and learn from your experience. So, Don, I want to start with you.
Okay.
As I understand it, there was a breakout of the virus in your congregation, and you yourself caught the virus and were sick with it for a couple of weeks.
Yes.
So what I want to ask is, how did that spread through the congregation, and how were you and the church affected by it?
Well, been a lot of speculation as to exactly where it started and when it started, but we were pretty confident that the first infected people were in our choir. And we had just had a very large choir event that we have once every 2 to 3 years called Meet the Composer. And we had, sadly, members from choirs all over the community that had joined us. And it was not long after that, about a week and a half after that, that I think the very first person began showing symptoms. By this time, we had already decided to downsize. You know, we had had our last public worship service, and we were going to go to just streaming worship. And in our last public gathering, we practiced spacing. We did not shake hands. Germ gel was abundantly available to everyone. We did everything we thought we needed to do. And then once we did have a diagnosis within the congregation, I met with Tracy and another pastor in town, and we even spaced ourselves in the room in such a way as to not, to violate the CDC recommendations. And our church had already gone to pretty much a skeletal crew and only allowing people in the building on an as-needed basis. And then that following Saturday night, Saturday morning early, it hit me. And when it hit hard.
Tracy, I'd like to ask you a question.
Okay.
I know that you shared with me previously that there are some members in your congregation who have been confirmed to have the virus as well. And so what I would like to ask you is, how do you approach pastoral care when you see your people in the situation that they're in? Like, in what ways can you be a pastor still and still keep yourself and others safe?
Well, one of the members that was diagnosed with the COVID-19 was a part of the service that Don just described to you. So she felt confident that that's how she was exposed to it. And the second actually sat behind her in worship service the following Sunday. So she felt that she was exposed as well. But one of the ways that we continue to do ministry to those who have been infected, and then just the congregation at large, is we keep tabs on one another by we've developed a calling list, and it's divided into groups, and we have callers who call each of the persons on their group to inquire about their health. And then that's reported back to the church. Prayer is offered to them. I continue to keep tabs on congregants by text messaging, and also a weekly live Facebook post as I am walking. We provide devotionals as well, a daily devotional, at least Monday through Thursday. So we do pastoral care in that way. Always sending out messages to encourage the congregants that though we are being challenged with this virus, we will see an end to it by God's grace. And during that time, we take responsibility in supporting one another in whatever ways that we can. And so part of the pastoral care is being extended among the congregants who are helping me to do the work of ministry in our congregation and beyond.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to ask you, Tracy, also, what are some of the common needs that you're seeing during this among people who either have been diagnosed with the virus or who have a family member that's diagnosed with the virus? What are some of the needs that you've encountered, or that the people who are helping you have encountered?
Well, I've lost count of the number of conversations that I have had with parishioners about the outbreak of the COVID-19. They've expressed the void and the struggles that they feel because we are not meeting together to worship is one of the things that they've expressed. And some have told me the fellowship, the hugs, the prayers, the hearing the sermon in real time in person is different. It creates a different experience as opposed to watching it streaming or pre-recorded. For others, this is basically the only time of the week that they get out and fellowship with others in a nurturing and meaningful way. And so this is affecting them emotionally. And then if you actually think about it, fellowship at its heart is a shared interest, companionship, and sociability. So when you take meeting together out of the equation, it changes the feel, the experience of the whole dynamic. And perhaps I believe that's the reason why we are encouraged not to neglect gathering as a community, but come together, encouraging each other, especially as the day of Christ approaches. And so that emotional aspect of being together is greatly affected. There's a struggle there of not seeing one another and not being able to shake hands and hug each other. So having that phone call is so important. And another aspect for us is that my congregation has some of the aging and underlying high risk individuals as a part of our community. And so what we've established is personal shoppers. And what they do, they're assigned 3 people and they get their shopping list for these individuals who may not have access to ordering online. Some cannot afford the incurred fee of having groceries delivered or their medications delivered. So these personal shoppers take the list, whether it be by email or over the phone, and some have given them their credit card to hang on to. And so they do the shopping, and then they deliver it and sit it in their garage. And then, of course, they pick it up and do what they need to do with that. So that's one of the ways that we are addressing a very present and real need in both of my congregations.
Thank you so much. Dawn, I'd like to ask you one more question, and before we get to talking with Krista and Cynthia. You had mentioned some of the precautions that you had taken before hosting the event to be aware of the situation, but to still allow people to gather. Is there anything that you wish that the congregation had done differently, knowing that you know now, that either may have been additional measures or may have been another way to go forward?
Well, we're talking about one worship gathering that occurred prior to the request that there not be gatherings of 10
Right.
or more.
Right.
And we went forward with the trying very diligently to make sure that we gave people their space. Again, germ gel, we didn't hug, we didn't shake hands. In fact, we encourage people just to put their hand over their heart saying, I'm hugging you with my heart, anything that we could think of that would keep our people as safe. I guess we were in that mindset that even limited gathering was good. In hindsight, had we not gathered that 1 week, would it have made a big difference? I'm really not sure. By the time that had happened, the virus had already spread, and within the next few days after that gathering, people were becoming symptomatic. So I think it was already in amongst our congregation. I certainly would not go back and say, okay, let's just do away with everything and let's meet and know God's going to protect us. I think that's irresponsible, and I also think it's pretty bad theology. So.
Thank you. All right. Cynthia and Krista, I'd like to focus on your experience for a moment. Krista, Dawn had told me previously that you had been involved in putting together an emergency plan before there were confirmed cases and before it was well known that the virus was starting to spread in your congregation. Can you tell me how important it was to have that emergency plan in place before anybody, including your pastor, became sick?
Well, already having a definite emergency plan in place, I don't know that we just didn't know what we were dealing with, and we certainly did not expect Dawn to get it. I'm the head of staff parish relations, and so and Dawn is my buddy. He's assigned to me, and so I, of course, got in contact with him and realized how bad he was. He felt bad. And so with his permission, I just kind of asked him, are you comfortable with me contacting some people and kind of getting some things going, thinking along the lines of how would a church member feel hearing this information as a response, as a church, what is our responsibility to our congregation to inform them without causing any kind of panic, and also respecting privacy. I called our trustees and we discussed, taking care of the buildings. What do we need to do to prepare the church for when we come back, and making people feel safe, and like we were being proactive because we are so ready. We are so ready to go back. So, I just I spoke with Tish, I spoke with Dawn, I called Cynthia, I called the head of our trustees, I talked to the head of finance, and we just kind of got together between all of us, just kind of going into, something we'd never dealt with before, just a plan that we thought would be best for our congregation and community.
So with that, was there anything that took place that happened that you didn't prepare for, that you didn't anticipate, or that was like, oh, well, that was a surprise?
Well, I don't know. In hindsight, I guess not, with Don, he usually is the take charge, and he was out of commission. So we really had to depend on each other, and we've got really solid leaders in our church, and we know who's good at what they do. And so for me, it was just kind of talk to everybody and say, why don't you focus on the building? Obviously, Cynthia is going to focus more on finances. We had other people who stepped up unbeknownst to me with the congregation and taking care and calling and checking on everybody. I sent out an email to our staff parish requesting that each one, because we all have somebody that we represent, to check with them to make sure they're okay if they need anything. So we all just kind of stuck with what our area was, and we just worked together.
All right. Cynthia, I'd like to ask you a couple questions. I want to ask if being a person who is on staff or in leadership, how people can continue the work of the church while keeping themselves and others safe. And I know that Tracy's touched on this a little bit, and Krista just touched on this a little bit as well. But I'd also like to hear, coming from a staff perspective, what you think as well.
Well, I'd like to kind of follow up on what both of them had said. And the church isn't just the building and the walls. It's obviously where we're used to meeting and stuff, but this is a great exercise in, even though we can't be together physically, the word social distant, I don't like that a lot, because I think we need to stay socially in connection and connected through technology. We're so lucky to all the technology we have. I'm sitting here doing this Zoom meeting, and with our phones and email, there's no excuse not to be able to be in contact with people. And I think that's a fear for me, is we have quite a few elderly in our congregation, and we don't want them to feel isolated. And so the church has been really good right away of setting up kind of shepherd teams. There's people checking on, and even prior to this virus, we have a care ministry that does that. And this is really expanded, I guess, is probably the right way to look at it. But there's quite a few people, like Krista had mentioned, going and getting groceries for people that can't, just checking on people, because the majority of the congregation physically is fine. It's a little bit maybe depressing, I guess, when you can't be together. And it's a very connected family of congregation, and it's welcoming, and they, dinners and social. Everybody loves to hug, and so I think that part is really, really hard. But with being able to see each other on these videos, or just the sound of somebody's voice can totally turn your day around. The night I had a first Zoom meeting, I was kind of dreading it because I hate being on video, and but just the difference in how my spirits were, just of seeing my friends' faces. And so I think that's really important for us to all recognize and remember, even just for a few seconds, to call, if somebody's on your mind, call them,
Yeah.
To build on that a little bit, this was not in the questions that I sent you, but I do want to know. This question's for Tracy, but something that Cynthia just mentioned was the need for that social interaction in some sort of sense. And so what I would like to ask is, how does the need for social interaction How does that relate to the role of pastoral care and our call to love each other as we love ourselves?
Well, I think that we're not able to meet in the building, and the people are the church, and we know that we have these restrictions, um, at this particular time. Um, but pastoral care encompasses quite a bit. Uh, and part of that is seeing the need, whatever that might be, the needs with an S on the end, and working toward finding a answer, a solution to meeting that need. And so that's what we've tried to do, is to see the need, but anticipate the need. And we have done that, and not just with our congregants, but we've tried to even move this into outreach ministry, because, as I said, we are the church, the people are the church. And so we don't stop doing church just because we have a challenge that is huge. Granted, it's huge, but we don't stop being the church. And those who were even affected by it, this COVID-19, don't want us to stop. And so what we've done is found ways to reach out beyond what we normally do in ministering to one another. I mentioned the personal shopping, but there's the spiritual care of that, being able to pray with one another. And it's not just me doing that, it's the congregants that are doing that with one another. But what we did was we also formed a task force, and this task force is comprised of our administrative council. And so you have those areas of specialties where they hone in on what they're good at doing, and then just take charge in doing it. And like our finance chair, we actually sat down to map out how we financially could move through this and keep our staff on, um, so that this wouldn't affect them in a financial way, because this touches every area of our lives. If we haven't realized that yet, it touches every area. And that's, to me, part of this pastoral care, is inviting them to participate with me in something that none of us have ever dealt with before. It's huge. It's new, and we're coming up on things daily as we experience this. One of the reasons I told the congregation that I thought we needed to form a task force is because the information was coming so quickly. It was too hard to decipher and know what to do without the input of your family, your community, um, the people that you share life with on a weekly basis. So this is part of that care, pastoral care, and the church, the congregation, is helping me to do that.
Thank you so much. I appreciate what you said. So I'd like to ask, Krista, what kind of action steps do you recommend that churches who have not yet had to face the COVID-19 virus transmission in their own communities, what action steps would you recommend that they take now before they encounter this situation?
Well, I may ask for some help on this from Dawn and Cynthia. I think that, first of all, having something in place, a care team in place, you do need to think about your members who are not computer savvy, or they don't have that connection. Because my parents, they're kind of, but not they're not confident with it. And making sure that every single person is being connected with on a, maybe even, I don't know about a daily basis, but frequently throughout the week, making sure there are people to help run errands, because, I'm sure they're scared, and, and they're lonely. And, somebody had said, Sundays are it's our day to be able to connect with people. And I think sometimes in our busy lives, we forget that that's the highlight of a lot of people's week and it is, as it is ours, but that's the only connection they get sometimes is on Sundays. So I think it's really important to have people in place that will check on members. I also think it's important to have something in place on how you're going to communicate to not necessarily just your congregation, but also the community. We are on TV every Sunday, and we're on Facebook now, and we have multiple ways of giving and connecting and reaching out. And so if you don't have that set up, you need to, so people can know what's going on. Dawn and Cynthia, have I left anything out that I'm not thinking of? Checking on people, reaching out to the community, letting people know what's going on without scaring them, but letting them know that we're being proactive and we are, doing what we can to get through this.
The part that I was really blown away by in this whole process was once I got sick, and it's not significant. I was very sick, and it made it very difficult for me to function at all. And when I would have those moments of lucidness, when I would talk to Krista or talk to Cynthia or talk to someone, and of course I had all these things in my mind that, how about this? What about this? And to find out they had already taken care of all those things, that they had anticipated and had started talking amongst themselves, amongst the leadership. And as much as pastors sometimes like to think we're indispensable, reality is we're one part of something much bigger and so much stronger. And it really was a great help to me knowing that my church was functioning quite well, even though I wasn't hitting on all cylinders. And that has been the biggest blessing for me in this.
Thank you for sharing that. Cindy, I wanted to ask you either if you had something to build off of what Krista had said about action steps, but also ask how urgent it is for churches to take these steps now if they haven't already.
I would think it's very urgent. Obviously, we're all impacted. I'm unaware of any churches still meeting in our area. I can't imagine with the guidelines that anyone is or certainly shouldn't be in the church setting. But, with new ways, streaming worship and that kind of thing, we are together. Within the building, absolutely not. And the ministries of the church do still go on, and it's really important to have ways for people to still be able to give their offering outside of the offering plate. We already have that set up just for different ways, through our website on PayPal or the texting through Vanco that the conference has in place. Venmo, stock, there's so many different options in addition to the offering plate. And so now is the time, and we've it's a fine line because you need to be cognizant that everybody's concerned about lots of things, bills, everything of their own. But communication is key for people, and a lot of people have given through these new ways for the first time ever this week on a lot of them. But I think it's imperative. If you haven't taken the steps that we've talked about before, I think it's imperative that people do right now because we're all in it together.
Thank you. Dawn, I'd like to ask the final question to you. Based on your personal experience, both as a pastor and as somebody who was sick with this virus, what do churches risk if they continue to meet in person for small gatherings, either in the church building or at somebody's home?
Well, we have evidence that not only did people contract this in the choir. We're a real active church. We have a Wednesday night program, and we'll have a fellowship hall full of people for a dinner and singing, study of some sort. The kids have programs, youth have programs. And then we have small groups that meet too during the week. And we have evidence that even in some of these small groups that the virus may very well have shared. We don't know concretely. The reality is, we have to realize that this is just a season. It's just a temporary time. And as much as it's just destroying me, the thought of not worshiping and celebrating the resurrection a week from today with my family, every Sunday's a little resurrection. And, we're going to have a big Easter Sunday coming up here pretty soon. And I just don't know if it's going to happen at the end of April or May or June, but it's going to happen. And I can't wait to get back with my family. I can't wait.
Thank you so much. I'd like to ask anybody if you have any closing statements. We'll just go right down the line here. So, Dawn, do you have anything that you'd like to say in closing?
Just be very careful. This is serious stuff. People are dying. It's that serious.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Cynthia?
I think in final thoughts, it's the key is to just make sure and communicate and stay in touch with everyone and definitely take this seriously.
Thank you. Krista?
I would agree with what Cynthia just said. For us, it seemed like it hit really fast, and you have to act fast on it. You can't mess around with this. You really need not to be scared, but it's I know Don is just, he can't wait, and all of us can't wait to get back. But it's not worth meeting and risking. So I would just say be patient and pray and help one another out, but definitely, yeah, we need to stay put.
Thank you. Tracy, would you like to share closing thoughts?
Yeah, I just have to say I agree with what has been spoken, but also for us to remember that, we pray and ask for wisdom and knowledge to deal with the challenges that we face every day. And part of the wisdom and the knowledge that we have received is the guidelines that have been set in place. And we should take those seriously. We should stay at home. We are giving a gift to our family and our friends and others. We are showing how much we love them by staying at home during this season, as Don mentioned. The other thing is, as family, there are many ways that we can keep in contact, whether you are media savvy or not. We have lost the art of picking the telephone up and calling the people that we love. And we can do that as well as using all of the other social medias that we have at our hand right now. Most of all is to continue to pray for one another. And out of this ugly virus, out of this ugly situation, have the faith that God is going to take this and use it to bring something good, to make us stronger and better people for this. Not that he caused it, not that he brought it on, but we can take a bad situation and make lemonade out of it. And I believe that God will do that as we work together as the body of Christ, as colleagues, as friends, as family. Something good can come out of this. We don't have to live in fear and anxiety, for God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of love, power, and a sound mind.
Thank you so much for that word.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, I want to thank all four of you for being here today. I very much appreciate your openness, your honesty, in sharing your personal experience with us, your church's experience with us. I also want to let anybody who's watching this know that we do have a page of resources in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. You can find them at our website at okumc.org/pandemic resources. There are discipleship resources, mission resources, there's financial guidance, resources for responding via text messaging or new technology or any other needs that you might have. And if you are experiencing a need and you don't see something that you need, go ahead and send me an email, editor@okumc.org, and we'll see what we can do to help you meet those needs. So again, thank you to Dawn, to Tracy, to Krista, and to Cynthia. I very much appreciate you all being here with us today. And thank you so much for being a part of this conversation and for sharing what you've experienced with all of us.
Okay.
Thank you.
A pleasure.
All right. God bless. Take care.